You know that magical moment when you first see Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan stand in the middle of a gigantic crowd of people and just beat the crap out of large numbers of burly men, somehow swathing every single one with the least amount of effort and the most amount of destructive force, all while standing completely, essentially, stationary, or spinning, or otherwise in a better off shape than 20 other people. It's always quite fun. They are probably the greatest examples in film history, but others do apply, and it was that thought, that driving motivation, that probably started the entire, if I recall correctly, the stick figure phenomenon on Flash, which was basically people thinking, why don't we do these amazing martial arts moves, except I don't have the budget and I don't have the talent to draw these amazing characters. This is a time before animation was getting to the point where you could have amazing fight scenes at that level. So what they did was, okay, let's go with the lowest common denominator and run everything with stick figures. There's an amazing amount of detail that you can put in just a stick figure because you can give them a sense of personality without doing too much to the art. And this allowed for some of the most exciting and interesting things of, I think, 90s, basically, the 1990s. And it really sparked the innovation on what you could push with just stick figures. Then comes along One Finger Death Punch, which is what's been playing in the background so far. One Finger Death Punch is when you take this idea, except instead of watching an amazing scene, which you see these amazing characters play out, people with lightsabers, swords, knives, bows, fighting in a great big grand brawl, you, the player, are now tasked to survive it. And that's, in its own way, taking you to the next step. Except it takes it a little bit further and probably a little more exciting in that it is a completely reactionary and completely skill-based idea using only two buttons, the left and the right, and the combinations at which you can kill them with a single punch. It's called One Finger Death Punch because technically you can play the game with a single finger, but really there's two buttons, so I would highly suggest you use two buttons. You use two fingers. But in any case, it's a fun little experiment on the idea. There's lots of interesting modes, but at its core, it's a reaction game where you get to see amazing fights evolve and show up because of your own speed of reaction. And that's a very, very fun thing to watch. It doesn't get old. I have played through the whole thing maybe 3 times, and it just gets faster and faster and more hectic, and it taxes your mind because you're trying to keep up with this amazing speed, these amazing actions. It stops time every now and again, it slows it down, it speeds it up, and you have to keep in pace with whatever the game tells you to do. And you can make mistakes, that's true. You could take hits, and you are not superhuman, obviously enough, but it rewards you for trying again, trying to see if you can do better, trying to make an impossible record, much like all of these old action heroes. And that's probably the most exciting thing to me. It feels good. It feels really, really good. And that's coming from a bunch of stick figures and 2 buttons that basically say I'll punch left and I punch right. Of course, there's a little bit more to it, but at its essence, at its very core, it's a very, very fun experience. And I wish more people would have taken lessons from them about action scenes. It's quite an interesting little gem. Doesn't take a lot of effort to learn, but takes a whole lot of experience to master. And that's probably the greatest thing. The most amazing thing, and I think this is probably where you can see the love and attention and care that has been put into this title, is the survival modes, where it starts out very, very slow, much like the start of the story mode, and then ramps up slowly and slowly and slowly, and then you get into the thousands of kills, and suddenly it becomes so fast that it starts to beat with your it starts to beat even faster than your heart, and you're trying to keep up. And finally, when you get through all of this and you've unlocked that, then they go into blind mode, because through all of this, if you notice, it actually tells you which buttons to press and in what order. It doesn't tell you outright what order, but there is basically an order to it. Now, that blind mode feels a lot more interesting just because you have to feel it out for yourself and basically be the Kung Fu master. That's to me, that was really interesting. But the third and final mode, the one that really showcased the love and attention to this game, is No Luca No mode. It's not really much of a spoiler, but in No Luca No mode, a cat will constantly bug you and try to stop you from playing, which adds an extra layer on top of the game. Rather than just pressing left and right, you will have to use the mouse to try and wave away the cat as it tries to bug you while you're trying to play. And that to me is probably the next step. You've mastered this entire gigantic system of great action, wonderful gameplay. Now try to do that while something is obviously trying to stop you from doing that. It reminds me a lot of an old Neopets game where you're trying to do this very simple task, but then pop-ups keep appearing and trying to slow you down. And to that extent, it becomes an interesting game just because of these amazing modes, all of these interesting ideas. There's lightsabers, there's brawls, there's one-to-one fights with these great martial arts where you're trying to one-up each other. And it all comes together into this idea of, I am a martial artist and this is the way I fight, this is how I fight other artists. And that's, as you would see, they are artists, and it is an art form. It is very pretty, and it does a lot of things right because of the way it flows and feels. I can't recommend this more. I wish that more people had seen it, and if you've never seen a great Kung Fu film, it still wouldn't be a bad reason to pick it up. But by watching both of these, I think you can get a better appreciation for the amount of effort and time that comes into putting together these amazing scenes. In any case, this has been Extreme Wirehead, and that's another list for me this week. I'll see you next week for another one. Peace.